Coming in at number 10 today is Aquaman versus the Joker. Did you know that even underwater, Aquaman was defeated by the Joker? No, not one-on-one, mind you. Aquaman would crush the Joker in a fistfight, but this is the Joker. Fistfights aren't really his thing anyways. In Legends of the DC Universe number 26 and 27, Joker heads to Atlantis to get away from Batman. Now, even though Aquaman knows exactly what the Joker is up to, the Joker is still able to somehow convince enough of the people of Atlantis that he is the king of the surface world and that he can help them with finding a cure for their infected fish. He even manages to get a scientist to fall in love with him. It is absolutely ridiculous. But it happened. Aquaman's own people turned on him because of the Joker. It's crazy. Number 9. Raven versus the Joker. Yes, it's another Joker one, I'm sorry, not really. In the Titans East special, the Joker teams up with Bizarro to help him kidnap some random famous singer. When the Teen Titans show up to save her, the Joker sends Bizarro after Starfire, Cyborg, and Wonder Girl while he stays and holds the hostage, leaving only Kid Flash, Robin, Beast Boy, and Raven to face the Joker alone. This is 4 heroes on one relatively weak guy, the Joker, and it should be an easy win. But still, while Kid Flash is able to snatch the Joker's weapon away, turns out that was actually a bomb, which Wally tries to run to a safe location, but it goes off, incapacitating Kid Flash. Then it's Raven's turn. Now, being as awesome as she is, she makes the Joker's worst nightmares appear before him in his mind. But she probably should have known better, because this is actually completely useless against the Joker, because it turns out that the Joker's nightmares are something that he finds absolutely hilarious. Once the Titans are able to use blue kryptonite to cripple Bizarro, the entire team is able to focus on the Joker, and he does go down, but for a moment, the Joker showed that he could probably take on half of the Teen Titans. Number 8. Daredevil versus Neymar. In Daredevil number 7, which is one of the most hilarious comics I have ever read, when Daredevil came face to face with the King of Atlantis, the incredibly powerful Neymar the Submariner, he was way out of his league. Neymar had been guilted into trying to reclaim an area for Atlantis on the surface world, and so he went waltzing into the offices of Matt Murdock trying to go the legal route to achieve his wishes before he got frustrated and just tried to force it to happen physically. Now, this took place during a Daredevil comic, so Matt was able to hold his own for a little while, but he wasn't punching Neymar or anything. He was just dodging Neymar massive blows and leading the fight into a construction site where he tried using a bulldozer to knock Neymar down. All this did was make Neymar more mad. Matt tries dropping rubble onto the Atlantean, who just shrugs it off and then topples the mighty machine that Daredevil was standing on. From this point, Matt actually just tries to run away, leaping onto a lamppost, and Neymar just rips it out of the ground, sending Matt crashing down. In his final desperate attempt, Matt wraps Neymar up in the wiring from the lamppost and tries to shock Neymar into defeat, but even with Matt's insulated gloves, they both get shocked and Neymar recovers way faster than Matt did, who was left crawling trying to just reach out at Neymar's ankles. Now, Neymar does applaud Daredevil's courage, but still, he got wrecked. Number 7. The Wasp versus Skrulls. There is a somewhat unspoken rule for major comic book events in Marvel Comics, and that rule is that at least one major superhero has to go to the pearly gates by the end. Captain America was the one in Civil War, and Thor was the one in Conclusion of Fear itself. Oh, and the Hulk did it in the Second Civil War. During the Secret Invasion run, when the Avengers faced off against the Skrulls, it was founding Avenger Janet Van Dyne, aka the Wasp, who snuffed it. 1 month before this event, Janet's ex-husband, Hank Pym, gifted her a new Pym particle growth serum that should be used in battle if things went south. As the heroes of Earth made their last stand against the Skrulls, Wasp used the particles, growing to an absolutely gargantuan size. But what she didn't realize was that the person who had been posing as Hank Pym was actually a Skrull named Kriti, I think is how you pronounce it. Not only that, but the growth serum that he had given her was actually a bomb that was meant to be activated in case the Skrull invasion failed. As she exploded, Thor used his enchanted hammer to control the blast, and even though he stopped the explosion from wiping out everyone else, he couldn't save Janet. And that's why humans are woefully unprepared for alien invasions.
Number 6. Green Green Ranger. Green Ranger Tommy Oliver usually is tempted by the dark side, but in the end he always comes back to the light, except in the case of his future self, Lorddracken. This is a story of Tommy who stayed evil, and when Tommy travels to a dystopian future where Rita Repulsa has won, Lorddracken is one of her top dogs, and Tommy is forced to face his own evil future self. This happens in a story arc of Boom Studios' Mighty Morphin Power Rangers that begins with the seeming destruction of Zordon and the Power Rangers' home base. From there, Tommy plummets into a possible future, and while the other Rangers back home are trying to find him, Tommy, in the future, manages to befriend the Rangers of this reality. Those of his friends, at least, that are still alive here. While the Rebellion and the Rangers attempt to take the battle once more to Rita Repulsa and her loyal generals like Lorddracken on this alternate Earth, Tommy squares off directly with Draken in issue number 14 of the series, and their initial one-on-one here does not go so well. Don't worry though, Green Ranger fans, Tommy fares better on the rebound fight in issue number 16. Number 5. Moon Knight. Moon Knight fights himself on a constant basis, at least himself in regards to, his other personas. They don't always agree on the best course of action, and they don't always get along. And then there is his brother, the other fist of Khonshu. No, we're not talking about Randall. Hunter's Moon. But at one point, Moon Knight also fought a straight up evil version of himself, and not within his own psyche either. And we're also not talking Khonshu, which sometimes is presented as an alternate persona of Mark's. We're talking about Moonshade. Moonshade is an evil doppelganger of Mark Spector's Moon Knight that was created by Magus. Moon Knight faced him and other heroes' evil doppelgangers during Infinity War when Magus attacked Earth. Moonshade actually attempted to absorb the powers of 616 Franklin Richards and all the Moon Knights across the multiverse, but fortunately, Mark, with some help, stopped him. Number 4. Invincible. It's Mark versus a team of evil Marks. In Invincible, Mark has to face a whole assembled league of his evil selves, similar to what Batman would go through later in the DC universe. These evil versions of Mark were rounded up by Angstrom Levy, a supervillain in the Invincible reality who, due to a misunderstanding, pretty much hates Mark completely. This is an attempt to get back at Invincible, who he knows is Mark Grayson. Previous to this attempt, Levy also tried kidnapping Mark's mom and his younger brother. Levy promised the evil alternate Marks each something they wanted, in general, more power in exchange for their help in defeating Mark and destroying his universe. However, it wouldn't go so great for them, or for their main continuity Mark, really. While the fight completely ruined Mark's reputation for a time and resulted in the death of Guardians of the Globe member Rexplode, in the end, the evil Marks would be defeated. And kind of brutally so in some cases. Number 3. Deadpool. Deadpool also sometimes is known as his own worst enemy. But other than fighting against his own nature, he has also fought a literal evil version of himself. This version of Deadpool is simply known as Evil Deadpool. He was built from pieces of Deadpool that were collected over the years by Dr. Ella Whitby, who was once Wade's psychiatric doctor when he was in prison and was revealed to actually be obsessed and in love with him. After this patchwork version of Deadpool came to life, it was revealed that he was basically like the opposite of Deadpool, and where Deadpool was a hero, an anti-hero at least, evil Deadpool was, well, very evil. Initially, Deadpool killed evil Deadpool by sacrificing the cure he had found for himself. It would have cured him of his healing factor, leaving him powerless and allowing him to die, which at that time was what he wanted. Deadpool was hoping to use it to end the pain of living for himself, but instead he sacrificed the cure to get rid of his evil counterpart. Don't worry though, that wouldn't be the last we'd see of evil Deadpool, who was far too fun of a character to kill off permanently after that first encounter. Number 2. Green Lantern. Green Lantern versus Green Lanterns galore in this story, War of the Green Lanterns. Here we see Hal Jordan take on a ton of Lanterns who have had their minds influenced by Parallax. Only a few Lanterns are immune, and they also happen to be some of the most well-known and prominent Lanterns in DC Comics, such as fellow Green Lantern John Stewart. A small group of Green Lanterns, including Hal, John, Kyle Rayner, Guy Gardner, and Kilowog, must work together to save the rest of the Corps from Parallax's influence and to also save the universe from Krona, the Guardian behind this attack who plans to control the Guardians under Parallax's influence so that he can rule the universe. Number 1. Sentry. Sentry is his own greatest villain. So when Sentry had to face Nemesis, he was actually just facing himself. literally. We're talking about when Sentry took on the Void, which is the greatest villain the planet has ever seen. Or, you know, one of them, because there's a lot of villains that claim that. And also happens to be the other dark persona residing in Robert Reynolds. Without the Void, the Sentry cannot exist. At least, that is what Bob was made to believe. Well, initially it was thought that the world was made to forget about the Sentry in order to protect the Earth from the Void, which also kinda like came as a package deal with him. It was later revealed that the idea of the Void was actually placed into Reynolds' mind by none other than Mastermind, who also made the world forget about the Sentry. The Void likely only manifested because Mastermind made Bob believe that should the Sentry ever return, the Devil would also appear and attack the world. Hence the manifestation of the Void. While Sentry battled the Void on many occasions, there are times that the Void has acted as a hero when the Sentry refused to be active at all in using his powers.
At number 10, we have Sandman. This is a classic Spider-Man villain, but he gets a spot on this list because his pure strength can sometimes be overlooked. I mean, he's known to be able to lift upwards of 85 tons on top of his other powers. He's capable of transformation, his classic sand manipulation, and arguably one of his most powerful traits, his intangibility. This describes his ability to change his density to allow attacks and objects to pass through his body on command. This makes it extremely hard for Spider-Man to land any attacks on him, and if a counterattack comes back with one of Sandman's rock-hard punches, Spidey's gonna be in real trouble. Sandman is a real threat and packs a massive punch, so on a list about power, it would have been a mistake to leave him out. At number 9, we've got Juggernaut. We all know that Juggernaut is normally an X-Men villain, but Spidey and this extremely powerful mutant do face off, most notably in the Amazing Spider-Man number 229 to 230. After Juggernaut breaks into Madame Web's home and rips her out of her life support chair, Spider-Man needs to get serious. But as the fight rages on, it's pretty clear that even Spider-Man is gonna have trouble managing the sheer might of this titanic villain. This is probably due to the fact that Juggernaut is demonically empowered by the Crimson Bands of Cyttorak, and his armor is unmatched in its durability. In the 230th issue, Spider-Man even drives a huge gasoline truck right into Juggernaut's body, letting it explode into a huge fireball. But he just walks away from this. So the only way that Spidey is eventually able to take him out for good is by allowing Juggernaut to sink into a giant slab of wet cement, keeping him down, at least for now. At number 8, I'm putting Rhino. Known to be able to lift between 75 and 100 tons, this villain is one of the strongest, brute force-wise, that Spider-Man ever faces off against. He stays back on the list simply because he still deals mainly in brute force and lacks dexterity in his approach to fighting. But a brute he is, as the Rhino is the manifestation of super durability and strength. His powers actually come about originally through gamma radiation treatments that give him several hundred pounds of added muscle tissue and bone to his body. He's known to be able to resist high caliber bullets, extreme temperatures, and fall damage even without his suit equipped. Good thing Spidey's so agile, because if he lets too many of Rhino's hits land, it might be lights out for our friendly neighborhood Spider. At number 7 is Mysterio. So far on the list, we've been dealing mainly with powerful villains in the traditional meaning of the word, brute strength. But Mysterio is a huge powerhouse, and he should not be counted out of a list about powerful villains. His power comes from his ability to absolutely discombobulate and confuse his enemies, and in many instances he's doing this to Spider-Man, him being a villain native to the Spider-Verse. One of the more notable face-offs between these two comes in issue 198 of The Amazing Spider-Man, when Spidey faces off against 12 clones of Mysterio, or I guess 11 clones and one real Mysterio. In this encounter, Spider-Man almost drowns at the hands of the villain, but narrowly escapes his fate just in time. And this isn't even the closest call he's had with this special effects artist turned mystical supervillain. At number 6 is the Predator. This bad guy isn't from the Batman universe, nor is he from any comic book world originally. Predator started in the self-titled movie featuring Arnold Schwarzenegger. Weird how that's the second time Arnold has made an appearance on this list. Anyway, this villain is a very unique one, and he faces off against Batman in Batman vs. Predator, a comic book series in 1991. It's a pretty epic face-off that lasts 4 long issues, and there are some pretty epic moments. What ends up sealing the deal for Predator is when Batman equips a very powerful armor and uses all the gadgets available to him to take out the alien. But the final tool that does the trick ends up being a baseball bat. Yep, you heard right. Batman beats the hell out of Predator with a baseball bat. leaving the alien to finish himself off with his own sword. It's a pretty brutal defeat, but did we really expect Predator to win? At number 5, we have the Batman Who Laughs. This villain is a force that Batman only faces off against here and there, but when he does, it's never an easy fight. This is because the Batman Who Laughs is a disturbing combination between Batman and the Joker, giving him the smarts and fighting skill of Batman and the absolute insanity of the Joker. Luckily, in the fight I'm thinking of for this entry, Batman gets the best of this crazy villain and gives him an absolutely savage beatdown. But it never seems to be enough to wipe the smile off of this villain's face. So it's not the most satisfying win for Batman in any case. The Batman Who Laughs has the power of Dr. Manhattan, as well as the power of every crisis in the history of the world. Don't ask me how this happens, but when it does, the whole of reality shakes in response. At number 4, we have the White Martians. With the same power as Martian Manhunter, these extraterrestrials are nothing to be taken lightly. Much like other classic depictions of alien creatures, these guys have a proclivity for taking over other planets and enslaving races at will. So when they get together and form a team called the Hyper Clan, the Justice League only finds out about their plans after it's too late, and it's chaos. Basically, the Justice League gets totally overpowered and all the team members are captured, except for Batman. Yes, they think Batman is as good as dead, so they leave him on the battlefield to die alone. But can you guess whether or not that's what happens? Right, Batman comes back with a vengeance and carries out a stealthy mission to take out the Martians one by one and frees his team of heroes before it's too late. But it's a close one. At number 3, we have Aries, the god of war. In Dark Knight's Metal, there are a number of different incarnations of Batman, and all of them are extremely powerful in their own ways. But one that might stand out from the rest is basically Batman wearing the helmet of Aries. Aries, for those of you who don't know, is the god of war in ancient mythology. And just to show how supremely powerful Batman could be, writers decided to put him in a comic with Batman and have Batman face off against him and win. He does get help from Wonder Woman, and it's by no means an easy fight considering Ares is after all the god of frickin' war. But Batman ends up taking his helmet and becoming the new god of war in the process. This sort of turns him into a tyrant, but that's besides the point. Ares is definitely one of Batman's strongest villains he's ever fought. At number 2, we have Evil Superman from the Dark Knight storyline. This one we all know. The famed face-off between an evil incarnation of Superman and a well-armored Batman. This event, which eventually inspired the Zack Snyder film Batman vs Superman, chronicles the epic war between the infinitely powerful Kryptonian alien Superman and the immortal Bruce Wayne. What makes this event so impactful and popular is that on paper, there's a huge discrepancy in power between these two. Anyone betting on the outcome of the fight would probably put their money on Superman. But what ends up taking place is entirely unexpected, with Batman taking the win over Superman at the end of the day. But it's fair to say this isn't easy by any means. It's Superman. He's only at number 2 because number 1 is nearly impossible to contend with. So last but certainly not least is Darkseid at number 1. During the Final Crisis event, Darkseid and his army invade Earth and take out a bunch of Earth's heroes. At first, this includes Batman, who's imprisoned quite easily by Darkseid and kept in his custody. And this is yet another huge mistake to leave Batman alive, because when Darkseid uses his anti-life equation on all of Earth, Batman is unaffected in Darkseid's custody. And he eventually finds a way to escape and hunts down Darkseid. Batman gets Darkseid good with a special god-killing bullet, seriously injuring him and nearly killing him. But Darkseid comes back at him by sending him back in time. But once again, even though it really looks like it, Batman isn't actually killed. It's pretty impressive that a mortal superhero is able to do so much damage on a literal ancient god who is otherwise used to taking everything in his way. But will someone finally learn that banishing Batman isn't gonna do the trick? Somebody's gotta take him out. Not that I want that, but it would be for their own good. This list is an example.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Spider-Man, Jester, and Jack-O-Lantern. The MCU's Captain America's Civil War is much more tame than the comic book. I mean, for starters, in the comic, Peter sides with Tony until he realizes that Tony is spying on him, so he switches over to Cap's side. That didn't happen in the movie at all. So in the comic, this causes Stark to send out Jester and Jack-o'-lantern to go and fight Spider-Man. So Peter ended up getting his butt kicked to these guys, and it's all thanks to Stark. There's no chance also that Peter should have lost to them. I mean, imagine if he didn't lose, the entire story would be so different. At first, the two thought taking orders from S.H.I.E.L.D. was a bum deal, as they put it, a bum deal. That is until they got the orders to fight Spider-Man, which they made very clear that they enjoyed doing. And before we continue on with this list, if you guys could go ahead and give us a thumbs up on this video, it helps the channel out a lot. We really appreciate it. You guys are the best. Thank you so much. Now back to our list. Number 9, Batman vs. Guy Gardner. Okay, this one comes from Justice League issue 5, and it's commonly known as the punch. We have a punch and we have a slap. Now it's time to talk about the punch. So in this comic, Batman comes to take over the Justice League International, and Guy Gardner doesn't share the same enthusiasm as the rest of the team. So for more than one issue, he makes it very clear that he doesn't like this new leader. He's not a fan of the Bats. So naturally, a large conflict was growing, although Batman was clearly the better fit for the role. So he challenged Batman to a fight without the use of his power ring. Big mistake. And then Batman proceeded to knock him out with one punch. One punch, one punch. Yes, here we go. Blue Beetle even got pumped about it and started yelling, one punch, one punch. Hence why it's a big thing now. This is an amazing moment and an even greater lesson rather, but a Green Lantern getting knocked out by a human punch should never happen, ever. Never. Don't start fights you can't win without the ring that makes you a superhero, or else you're just a guy in a suit. Pun intended. Number 8, Bruiser vs. Wolverine. Runaways, issue 12. So we see Logan and Molly Hayes, aka Bruiser, have a rather quick exchange. Now at this time, Wolverine was a member of the New Avengers, and he's trying to get to the bottom of what happened to Dagger. So he, Cap, and Iron Man went to find help from the Runaways, seeing as the signs were leading to Cloak being responsible. So Molly is one of the strongest heroes ever, for sure. But how she handled Wolverine was almost a little bit too easy. So they walk into the cathedral, Cap calmly asks her to stop screaming, and that Wolverine and him are not going to hurt her. Laying the foundation. Good. Said very calm, from a very calm man. This is good. The screaming continues, and Wolverine even asks if she's heard of heightened senses, and then gives her 3 seconds to stop drilling a hole into his brain. So he counts 3, 2, and then the next page we have outside face down Logan in the snow. Then when he comes back in, he's quite embarrassed about what just happened, even saying how he won't tell anybody tonight what happened if they don't, as he brushes off some snow. Number 7, Captain America and Sharon Carter. We go back now again to the Civil War comic book event where Captain America was killed by Sharon Carter. Yeah, after Crossbones sniped him, Agent 13, who was also at the time Cap's girlfriend, delivered the final bullet from a much, much closer point. Well, it turns out it wasn't Sharon who was doing the work, really. I mean, the classic brainwashing made this defeat happen. Dr. Faustus. Yeah, this causes a whole chain of events. I mean, for starters, Bucky decides at that point that he should go and try and kill Iron Man, blaming him for the death of Steve Rogers. And then Falcon also goes after his own lead. Now, Tony ended up showing Bucky the letter that Cap wrote about how he should be the next Captain America, and Bucky agrees to take the spot only if he can operate solo. No shield, no nothing, I'm not working for you, I'm not punching in, I'm just doing my thing. And to think that all this came to a climax after Steve's girlfriend, of all people, was the one to deliver the fatal blow, it's just heartbreaking, and it's something that never should have happened.
At number 6 is Morlun. At his base level, this vampire-like villain isn't necessarily the strongest, but his potential for extreme power comes from his ability to absorb the life force of any and all living creatures. And this ability may be a source of limitless power if used in the right way. He's also able to travel between universes, often finding himself on different versions of Earth, sapping life forces here and there. During the Great Hunt storyline, he actually kills and steals the life of Earth 311 Spider-Man, as well as a monstrous Spider-Man and yet another actual Spider-Man in another world, which is a pretty good resume already for the standards of any Spider-Man villain. However, he still isn't able to take on the Earth 616 Peter Parker, but a universe-traversing vampire creature that saps power from other superpowered beings is not to be taken lightly. At number 5, we have Venom. Spawned by the Elder God Null, Venom is a symbiote that latches onto a host and takes it over, giving them a dark and menacing appearance and extremely powerful set of abilities. I mean, seriously, if you check out Venom's power set, it's pages long. Even without a host, the symbiote can use its slimy biomass to grab onto things and attack using tentacle-like extensions of itself. But when it does latch onto a host, it's able to mix its own power with that of whoever it's taking over. So when Peter Parker is taken over, there's a different set of abilities in Venom's arsenal than when Eddie Brock is overtaken. But Brock's Venom is a pretty serious villain on his own, touting telepathy, superhuman stamina, and immunity to Spider-Man's spidey senses. This last ability is hugely significant and gives Venom a huge boost of power, specifically when facing off against Spider-Man. I mean, Spidey with no spidey senses, he relies on it pretty heavily during battle, so that's a big one. At number 4 is the Red Goblin. This Green Goblin Carnage hybrid poses a serious threat to Peter Parker on numerous occasions, and honestly, I don't blame Spider-Man for allowing so many close calls. The Red Goblin is what happens when Spider-Man uses nanites to take away Norman Osborn's ability to use the Green Goblin formula, because as he searches for his powers once again, Norman comes in contact with the Carnage symbiote and bonds with it. He then uses his ingenuity to remove Spider-Man's nanites and is able to use the Green Goblin formula once more. And a Green Goblin with the added powers of the Carnage symbiote is no joke. This hybrid villain is actually part of a major finale that caps off the Amazing Spider-Man comics series. So you can take a look for yourself at the sheer power of Red Goblin by reading the event Go Down Swinging, issues 797, which would be the Amazing Spider-Man issues 797 to 801. Shoot me a DM and let me know what you think. I didn't know much about Red Goblin before this list, so I'd love to hear some trivia. At number 3 is Firelord. Easing into the top 3 is when we start running into these cosmic bad guys that bring otherworldly levels of firepower to the table. This Herald of Galactus is no ordinary bad guy. In fact, he wields the Power Cosmic, a source of nearly limitless power, and he sure doesn't hold back when facing off against Spider-Man. Their fateful encounter takes place in the Amazing Spider-Man number 270 when Firelord makes his way to Earth but is immediately intercepted by Spider-Man. Luckily, Spidey is in his symbiote suit and gives this cosmic bad guy a run for his money. It's a pretty harrowing battle though, and gives us a reason to put Firelord right near the top of this list. At number 2 we have Carnage. This very powerful and very dangerous villain originates at Rikers Island Prison, where a serial killer named Cletus Cassidy is infected by the asexually produced offspring of Venom, and it's all because Venom comes back to save Eddie Brock at the prison and leaves the Carnage symbiote behind. If only they realized that a few metal bars weren't going to stop the symbiotes from finding their hosts, Spider-Man might never have had to deal with Carnage in the first place. Now, Cletus's Carnage is known to have a little less of a refined fighting ability than Eddie Brock and Patrick Mulligan, but he is significantly stronger. He's even known to surpass both Venom and Spider-Man's strengths combined, with a lifting capacity of 80 tons. And remember, there's a crazed serial killer behind the guise of this unstable symbiote. Cletus Cassidy was already a dangerous and determined sociopathic killer far before Carnage ever came into the picture. Alright, at number 1, we have the one and only, you probably already guessed it, Thanos. During the Battle of Titan, Thanos is confronted by Iron Man, Doctor Strange, the Guardians of the Galaxy, and Spidey. And I think we all know what happens next. It's not the greatest outcome for the heroes, including Spider-Man, and this is pretty easily argued as being one of Spider-Man's most perilous matchups of his whole life. And sure, some of it is circumstance, and Thanos does have the Infinity Stones, but most of why this is such a game-changing battle is because of Thanos' sheer power on his own. He's by far the most powerful Eternal that comes from Titan, and is categorized as a Category 1 Life Ender by the Nova Corps. He's not just a threat to Spider-Man, but to the whole cosmos. And if not for this one fateful encounter with Spider-Man, he wouldn't have even made his way onto this list, because otherwise, Spider-Man would have no reason fighting such a powerful villain. Thanos is just out of Spider-Man's leagues in terms of power, and that's not a diss to my favorite superhero, it's just the sad truth of the matter.
Number 10, Professor X. Professor X fought a version of himself in the form of a Mummudrai. His Mummudrai, of course, to be specific. That's right, we're talking about one of the first fights Charles ever fought, while he was still in the womb. This was against Cassandra Nova, his Mummudrai twin. Charles as a baby sensed that he was in danger from Cassandra, and in response, his mutant powers activated, before he was even born. Professor X is so underrated. He fought back against Cassandra and defeated her then, but unfortunately she would still survive. While the baby was delivered but said to have not been alive upon birth, Cassandra would actually live on as a collection of cells. Down in the sewers, she would bide her time, growing for herself a new body, so that one day she may return. For those who are unfamiliar with the Mummudrai, they are presented as being a version of the self known in Shi'ar mythos as representing the anti-self. The Shi'ar believe that one must fight and defeat their own Mummudrai before they can be born. Number 9. Ben 10. Ben is also a hero, albeit one from the animated series Ben 10, where he is also the protagonist. Ben has had to face many different adversaries and monsters, including his own future self. I love a good evil future self fight. Initially, when we're introduced to Eon in the series, his true identity is a mystery. However, it would later be revealed that he was an evil alternate version of Ben, similar in appearance to Ultimate Ben or Ben 10,000 as he is known, but of course, evil. Eon planned to absorb both Ben and Ben 10,000 so that he could change the timeline, but would face off against Ben, Kevin, Gwen, and Ben 10,000 and ultimately be defeated. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, head on over to our Facebook, show some love for the channel there, it really does help us out here. Number 8. Wonder Woman. Recently, Wonder Woman had to fight a dark reflection of herself, one that perhaps came from within her own psyche. We are led to believe that this version of Wonder Woman is what she is destined to become. The true darkness within herself made manifest, the God Queen of Asgard. Honestly, with her look, she reminds me of death metal Wonder Woman that we got to see when she was, queen of the underworld. In reality, however, the fight with her own dark reflection is quite short because, well, it isn't actually her future self at all, but is simply an illusion that was made by Dr. Psycho, aka Cisco, who is also off-world with her as she travels Asgard on her quest. Number 7. Spider-Man. Miles Morales' Spider-Man also has had his own clones to deal with recently in the comics, namely one particularly evil clone known as Salim, which is Miles spelled backwards. And as that applies, Salim is like the opposite of the cheerful, good-natured hero of Miles Morales that we know. Instead, Salim is only interested in power, and namely providing to Miles that he is the greatest among the different versions of him, superior even to the original Miles. Salim even goes as far to kidnap Miles' baby sister to get Miles' attention and draw him out. The two have a final fight, but in the end it is Miles, not Salim, who ends up being victorious, even winning his other clones Shift and Mind Spinner over to his side during their final fight in issue number 28 of Miles Morales' Spider-Man. Salim is unable to handle the defeat and the betrayal, believing that he has failed at his only one true purpose in life: to be the best.
Coming in at number 6, we have the Sentry versus the Incredible Hulk. After a long exile in outer space, the Hulk was understandably more than a little pissed at the Earth's heroes, and thus began the World War Hulk event as the big green monster returned to Earth. At first, the super strong hero known as the Sentry didn't want to join the battle, fearing the destruction that would take place, but soon began to relish the opportunity to fight someone he could actually punch without immediately disintegrating them. With two of the most powerful Avengers in existence clashing, the only thing that finally caused them to stop was the realization that if they both kept pushing their powers to their limit, the entire world might shatter before they do. Talk about some pretty high stakes. Coming in at number 5, we have Old King Thor versus Loki the Necro God. In the distant future, at the very end of the Marvel Universe, almost all life is already extinguished as the cosmos reaches its natural death. An elderly King Thor, however, finds that he still has one last enemy to defeat, his own brother Loki, but this time empowered with the same darkness created by the dark god Null, and that technically even counts as the very first symbiote. All black, the Necro Sword. With few mortals left to worry about, these two gods are finally able to unleash their full powers on one another in a final battle to determine once and for all which brother will come out on top. Coming in at number 4, we have the Spectre versus the AntiMonitor. At the very end of the event known as Crisis on Infinite Earths, all hope seemed lost. The AntiMonitor had brought all of his enemies to the dawn of creation and begun absorbing their powers for his final act that would destroy the DC multiverse and leave only the antimatter universe remaining. But at the last possible moment, the Spectre intervened. A mysterious DC hero that's now known to literally be the embodiment of the wrath of God, the Spectre was able to single-handedly hold back the AntiMonitor and ultimately cause the creation of a new DC universe instead of the pure destruction that the AntiMonitor desired. At number 3, we've got to go with the climactic showdown from one of the most beloved graphic novels of all time, Dr. Manhattan vs. Ozymandias in Watchmen. This battle was more of a philosophical debate than a physical confrontation, but still led to explosive results and held the entire fate of the Watchmen universe in the balance. To do what he deemed to be necessary to save humanity, Ozymandias faked an alien invasion against the world to unite America and the USSR against the common foe. To do this, he needed to manipulate Dr. Manhattan, the most powerful being in the universe, into believing he should leave Earth as to not interfere with Ozymandias' plans. By the time Dr. Manhattan returned, it was too late to prevent millions of deaths, and thus Manhattan eventually agreed that the best course of action was to let Ozymandias' actions remain unpunished. Definitely not a typical superhero versus supervillain story, but in the Watchmen universe, this is about as close as you're gonna get. Coming in at number 2, we have Thanos versus Thor, but in a weird twist, Thanos was actually kind of the good guy in this one. During an event called Blood and Thunder, during which Thor apparently lost control of both his powers and his mind, many cosmic heroes such as Adam Warlock and the Silver Surfer had to team up to try and subdue the God of Thunder. With none of them being physically strong enough to hold down Thor, the heroes were forced to teleport Thor to the one villain that could hold his own, Thanos. While Thanos enjoyed their evenly matched fight at first, he soon realized that Thor's lack of control could prove deadly for the entire universe, and eventually was able to stun Thor with a surprise laser attack. And while Thor would eventually go back to the side of good, it's nice to know that even Thanos has some standards. Sometimes. And finally, coming in at our number 1 spot, we have the Darkest Knight versus Golden God Mode Wonder Woman. During the grand finale of the Dark Knight's death metal event, the DC multiverse seemed to be at its bleakest moment. The Batman Who Laughs had been upgraded with all of the godlike powers of Dr. Manhattan, had already defeated Perpetua, the creator of the multiverse, and was set to remake reality in his own hellish image. The only being capable of standing up to the Darkest Knight was Wonder Woman, using all of her godly energy and forging an armor of pure anti-crisis energy with the power of her lasso of truth. Even with all of this strength, Wonder Woman was just barely able to push the Darkest Knight into the final sun at the very death of the universe, putting an end to the biggest battle the DC multiverse had ever seen.
Number 10, the Hulk versus Horfin. Loki, the god of mischief, very famously has a very large wolf for a son, named Fenris, or Fenrir, however you want to pronounce it. That wolf is absolutely diabolically powerful. As such, his own offspring are also pretty powerful. But specifically, we're talking about the Lycan known as Horfin. Now, on the other hand of this discussion, the Hulk is quite strong as well. We have seen him team up with Asgardians from time to time, being one of the only Midgard heroes to be able to do so. We have seen a giant wolf face the Hulk in the MCU, and that was awesome. But when the Hulk was helping out some of the Norse pantheon in Incredible Hulk number 422, he faced Horfin, and it did not go well. Horfin ate both the Hulk and the Asgardian volley with gamma green fluids coating his teeth and lips. This comes right at the end of the issue, and it ends off with the comic saying, hilariously I might add, and then ... they died. Now, luckily in the next issue, the two wake up in the realm of the goddess of death, Hela, and she eventually resurrects the two inside Horfin's stomach so that they could smash their way back out. But I've honestly never seen the Hulk lose like that before. It was kind of crazy. Number 9, Superman versus Deathstroke. Knowing who Superman is, we are all pretty aware that not a lot of people can beat him, and those that have are almost all supremely powerful. But some of them are just clever. For example, Deathstroke. There have been a few times that these two have come to blows, usually ending in a draw, surprisingly enough, but one of my favorite Deathstroke and Superman matchups occurred during the New 52 era in Deathstroke number 9. The issue featured a surprising team-up between Slade Wilson and Wonder Woman as the duo battled against a Titan and his mythical army on Themyscira. Now, Deathstroke had acquired the legendary God Killer sword and swore to use it to vanquish Lepidus, which is the Titan, once and for all, when Superman unexpectedly arrived in response to all the commotion. Now, being a big old suck and assuming Deathstroke was responsible for all the mayhem, Superman sought to take him down before being parried and surprised by a massive swing from the God Killer sword, with Deathstroke using the flat end of the blade to completely floor the Man of Steel due to his weakness to magic. The sword helps Slade to even hold the Man of Steel for a short period of time, but eventually Supes uses his speed to get his hands on Deathstroke before Wonder Woman breaks up the fight, making this all a bit of a draw. But still. Number 8. Mysterio vs. Wolverine. The post-apocalyptic world featured in the Old Man Logan story came to be when the villains decided that instead of fighting their usual villains, who they always lose to, they would instead put themselves up against whatever hero they were actually best suited to face. Basically, I could talk about all the villains for this entire list, but I'm not going to do that. In the case of Wolverine, that happened to be Mysterio. Now, Mysterio is a master of creating illusions that trick even the senses, and he is almost always defeated by Spider-Man because of his spider sense. But for Logan, his super sensors are one of his key traits, so when Mysterio uses his illusions to trick those senses into believing that the X-Mansion was being attacked by Doc Ock, Ulysses Claw, Strife, and a whole squad of powerful villains, Wolverine held nothing back. Using his claws, he cut through the villains like butter. With all the other X-Men nowhere to be found, it was Wolverine versus everyone, and he was taking all of those villains to the grave. When he finally took down the last one, Bullseye, the illusion was lifted to reveal that these villains were in actuality his fellow X-Men, who were just caught completely off guard by the sudden attack from one of their own. Number 7. Blue Beetle vs. Giganta. Blue Beetle. Beetle is in the name, so you'd think that he'd be pretty aware that villains who can grow to massive size can give him some issues. But I don't think any of us realized how much of an issue it would actually cause for young, inexperienced Jaime Reyes. In the 19th issue of the 2006 run of Blue Beetle, La Dama, Jaime's crime boss rival and the aunt to one of his best friends, is being attacked by the Wonder Woman villain known as Giganta. As she smashes La Dama's house and chases her through the streets, Blue Beetle is doing everything he can think of to try and keep La Dama alive and also stop Giganta, but everything he tries to bring her down just bounces right off of her. He is trying to subdue her like she's a normal woman. Now luckily, Jaime is being trained by Peacemaker at this point in time, and he, alongside some called-in advice, lets Jaime in on a little secret. Humans becoming giant requires them to magically enhance their bodies so that it can handle the strain of being that large without collapsing into a pile of broken bones and goo. The fight took a turn when Jaime took Peacemaker's lesson to heart about the subtleties of the human body, and he finally figured out how to use Giganta's size against her, but it took a hell of a long time.
Coming in at number 6, we have Spider-Man vs. Iron Man. While these two characters have a close relationship in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and even fought on the same side during the MCU Civil War, things are a bit more complicated in the comic books. Originally siding with Iron Man and even going so far as to reveal his identity to the public to support the Superhero Registration Act, Peter Parker eventually began to regret his actions and turned against his former friend. While Iron Man attempted to stop Spidey with a failsafe protocol built into his Iron Spider suit, Peter revealed that he'd already reprogrammed it, showing that sometimes Tony Stark isn't the cleverest person in the room. Coming in at number 5, we have the Black Panther vs. Wolverine. During a storyline in which the Phoenix Force, usually residing within Jean Grey, has chosen to take a new host, a tournament is fought for who should gain the honor. Two of the combatants that are given a small amount of the Phoenix Force for their bout are Wolverine and Black Panther, both of whom are eager to battle one another to figure out which metal is stronger, Wolverine's adamantium skeleton or the vibranium of Wakanda. With both heroes even stronger and more violent than usual due to their Phoenix possession, this fight nearly threatened to burn up the entire Marvel Universe. Coming in at number 4, we have the Hulk vs. Vision. During a battle with the Hulk, when Bruce Banner had lost control of the monster, the Vision attempted to use his density powers to make himself himself as strong and immovable as the Hulk, only to find the Hulk was able to grow past his own strength. To thwart this, the Vision had to phase into the Hulk himself, trying to forge a mental connection with the Green Beast and reach Bruce Banner within. The visuals of a superhero literally phasing into another are both honestly super cool looking, but it winds up taking both the Vision's mental attacks and the pleading of Betty Ross to finally snap the Hulk out of it and return Bruce Banner's mind to the surface. Coming in at number 3, we have Spider-Man vs. Wolverine, a battle so long overdue that Spider-Man vs. Wolverine is literally the name of the comic it appeared in. Following the murder of his friend Ned Leeds, Peter Parker is rescued from gangsters by Wolverine while in Europe, and forced to use a low-quality Spider-Man fan costume he buys from a store. Originally working as teammates, Spider-Man and Wolverine unfortunately come to blows as Spidey realizes that Wolverine intends to kill the villains they've been fighting, and has to take on the bloodlust-crazed mutant to prevent him from killing a woman named Charlie. Unfortunately, the woman winds up jumping in front of one of Spidey's fists herself, killing herself and traumatizing Peter in a very dark one-off that's probably best left in the 80s where it belongs. Coming in at number 2, we have Captain America vs. Iron Man in the MCU film Captain America: Civil War. While their fight in the comic books is an incredible spectacle all on its own, my personal favorite confrontation is how this movie deals with its final battle. Building us up with the expectation that Iron Man and Cap will have to team up to defeat an army of evil Winter Soldiers, a plot twist is thrown our way when the soldiers are revealed to be dead, and Baron Zemo reveals the reason he led the heroes out all this way was to show that Bucky Barnes killed Tony Stark's parents. Unable to accept that Cap never told him, Tony attacks Steve Rogers, and the two have a climactic battle that their friendship never really recovered from until the events of Avengers Endgame. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have Thor vs. Iron Man following the events of the Civil War comic book series. Tony Stark has made a lot of iffy choices in the comics, but few have been as disastrous as his attempt at a Thor clone. Intended to be a powerful deterrent against Cap's team during Civil War, this clone called Ragnarok quickly went out of control and caused the deaths of several heroes. Whenever the true Thor returned, he was furious at what Tony had done with his genetic code and fried every system in the suit of Iron Man armor, leaving Tony to walk back to Avengers HQ humiliated and defeated with one of the most decisive superhero smackdowns in comic book history.
At number 10, we have Talon and the Court of Owls. Now, what gives Talon power isn't his might as an individual villain, but the power he has over the Court of Owls, an organization that has posed a serious threat to Batman time and time again. But that doesn't mean that Talon hasn't done damage on Batman single-handedly either. One of the Talons, William Cobb, is actually responsible for killing members of the Wayne family and also for attempting to turn Dick Grayson evil. Once again, his level of brute force is not out of Batman's range, but having this type of influence on Batman's life, both on the streets of Gotham and in his personal life, at least has Talon squeezing onto the end of this list among the other powerful bad guys to come. Alright, at number 9 we have Mr. Freeze. Often dismissed as a campy and relatively harmless villain, Mr. Freeze brings more to the table than Arnold Schwarzenegger's goofy portrayal in Batman and Robin. Mr. Freeze's armor is actually known to be extremely durable, with its newest iteration being strong enough to deflect bullets and protect from explosions. And on top of that, of course, he's got his freeze gun. This unique weapon shoots a blast of ice cold energy that freezes everything in its path, often leaving its targets encased in a tomb of ice. He's also a scientific genius, having designed and built every piece of equipment he wears and every weapon he uses. So his capabilities for years to come may only get more and more dangerous to Batman as he innovates his armor and weaponry further. And time is on his side, considering his lifespan has increased since the day he started wearing his Sub-Zero suit. At number 8 we have Solomon Grundy. This villain may not strike you as posing a huge threat to Batman, but you might be surprised. Also known to be a villain to Superman, Solomon Grundy is actually known to have a strength level on par with the Man of Steel himself. So that alone is enough for this guy to make a list about sheer power. With many of Batman's villains being tricksters and glorified terrorists, Solomon Grundy's extreme power has him standing out from the crowd no matter which way you look at it. And this villain has literally been dead before, so it's insinuated that he's pretty much invulnerable. And if Batman ever finds a way to take him out, it most likely won't be for good. And it surely isn't ever easy to do so either. At number 7 is Deathstroke. Slade Wilson, or Deathstroke, is an extremely powerful bad guy who is basically a genetically enhanced super soldier with super durability, speed, strength, everything. Super everything. He is also a skilled tactician and martial artist, making him extremely competent in battle. In the Identity Crisis storyline, Deathstroke is hired by Dr. Light to protect him from the Justice League, who are tracking him down for a horrible crime. When Deathstroke comes after the Justice League, he shows them just how powerful and strategic he can be and takes out all of them, including Batman, beating him up so badly that he doesn't really see another beating like this until nightfall.
Number 6, Spider-Man vs. the Firebrand. In Amazing Spider-Man number 700.3, yes, that is how we used to number comics, it gave us one of the most horrifying Spider-Man scenes to date. The issue gets off to a start as the wall crawler takes on Firebrand, but Spidey is completely off of his game, apparently from eating too much pie at Aunt May's. That's the actual excuse he gave. Now that starts as a joke, but clearly he really was off of his game. After one too many quips pushes him over the line, Firebrand unleashes his full power, literally trying to end the life of our beloved webhead. Fair warning, the art here is not for the faint of heart. There is a close-up of Peter's face as Firebrand turns up the heat, firstly showing his Spidey costume burning away, followed by his actual skin cracking and burning. A huge explosion is then caused as the villain reaches his very limits, destroying everything around him. And somehow, Parker actually survives all of this and manages to crawl out of the rubble with his skin literally melting off of his body. There is no doubt that this would have been the end for Spider-Man, if not for the swift arrival of paramedics who managed to find his body and take him away. Number 5, Red Arrow vs. Prometheus. Taking place in 2010's Cry for Justice issue number 5, during a meeting of the Justice League, Red Arrow leaves briefly to tend to his daughter and subsequently returns later with a gory stump where his arm used to be. It's actually not till a later book that we find out what actually happened in the subsequent Justice League Rise and Fall. The issue opens up with Harper finishing up a video call with his daughter, and as the call ends, Shazam walks into the room and sucker punches Roy in the back of the head. He then reveals himself as the villain Prometheus and the mastermind behind the destruction of Star City. Now while fighting Prometheus, Red Arrow is caught off guard when the villain goes down and Prometheus launches a surprise attack, sending multiple discs that wound Roy. Now in his brief moment, a final blow from the villain takes Harper's arm clean off of the rest of his body, which eventually throws Harper into a coma. The rest of the Justice League managed to stop Prometheus eventually, but for Red Arrow, the pain wasn't over because in Prometheus's attack, he ended up ending the life of Red Arrow's daughter at the same time. And at number 4 today is Everyone vs. Brother Eye. Beginning 35 years into the future, DC Comics' Future's End depicts a world in which Brother Eye transformed almost all the superheroes into cyborg bugs. It's actually pretty horrifying, like body horror, it's scary. With only a small resistance left, Bruce Wayne created a time machine to prevent Brother Eye's rule from ever occurring. Now although Bruce was unable to travel back in time himself, the new Batman, Terry McGinnis, took his place. Unfortunately, Terry only traveled 30 years into the past, arriving 5 years too late. So in this not too distant future, Brother Eye's ascension was already underway, with Mr. Terrific working on the technology that would enhance Brother Eye's power. Terry teamed up with Tim Drake, who came out of retirement, to stop Brother Eye's technological apocalypse from happening. Unfortunately, Terry accidentally sped up the process and ultimately sacrificed himself in the battle with Brother Eye. Tim then took Terry's batsuit, traveling back in time 5 years, preventing the arrival of the heroes from Earth 2, and then when Tim went back 35 years into the future, stick with me here, he was shocked to learn that nothing had changed at all. Humanity was still controlled by Brother Eye's technology. Determined to fight Brother Eye, Tim became the next Batman, and this storyline continued in a new Batman Beyond series where Tim led a resistance against Brother Eye. Number 3, Spider-Man vs. Dr. Doom. Dr. Doom and Spider-Man do not fight in the same weight class at all. However, in their first ever encounter, Spider-Man did actually manage to get the better of Dr. Doom, and that may have stung Dr. Doom pretty bad. So, in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, number 349 to 350, when he came back, it did not go well for Spider-Man. This time, Spidey was tracking an elderly jewel thief named the Black Fox, who had stolen the priceless Trask Diamond. Black Fox also happened to barter one of Victor Von Doom's family heirlooms, an emerald passed down to him by his late mother, who means a lot to him. So, once Doom became aware of this transgression, he flew to New York and caught up with the Black Fox at the same time that Spider-Man did. When Spidey intervened on the Black Fox's behalf to stop Dr. Doom from actually taking his life, Dr. Doom did not hold back against Spider-Man. Doom nonchalantly thrashed the web-slinger, leaving him with his costume in tatters and desperately scrambling away for his life. While he convinced Doom to allow him to retrieve his family heirloom, Peter's severe beating had left him concussed, so much so that he even hallucinated Uncle Ben. The beating he took taught Spidey an important lesson about recognizing his limits, which is Dr. Doom. Dr. Doom is his limit. Number 2, Ghost Rider versus symbiotes. At one point, both Venom and Ghost Rider were part of the Thunderbolts team, and being a team of pretty morally gray characters and villains, it was literally only a matter of time until things got ugly. In Thunderbolts number 23, Ghost Rider and Venom came into conflict. Venom exposed his host at the time, stopping the Ghost Rider from using his Hellfire to accidentally take the life of the human host. So, instead, Ghost Rider used his penance stare on the symbiote. This is when we learned that Venom is actually resistant to the penance stare, as Ghost Rider was overwhelmed by how much sin that the Venom symbiote had actually done over the years. Now, I don't really understand this, as those are literally the things that the penance stare is supposed to manipulate and use against its victim, but there is proof that this may just be a symbiote power. There was an instance during a crossover between Ghost Rider, Blaze, Spirits of Vengeance, and Web of Spider-Man that revealed that there was a problem between Ghost Rider's penance stare and the symbiote's, period, since they are not from this planet. Again, I don't know how that works, but that's just how it works. It's a comic book. I don't know, have fun with it. And finally, in at number 1 today is Iron Man v Venom. Coming to us in the 302nd issue of Iron Man, after Stark Industries was falsely implicated in a scandal, society was under the impression that its CEO, Tony Stark, was exploiting the poor for his own ends. Now, this was at a time that Venom was beginning to see himself as a guardian of the innocent, a lethal protector, if you will. So, in retaliation, he tracked Tony Stark down and bit his head clean off. Just kidding. Thankfully, this Tony Stark was actually a life model decoy that Tony was controlling remotely. Now, Venom knew pretty quick where he would find the real Tony and made his way to Tony's penthouse. Running for his life, Tony headed to the armory, keeping just out of reach of Venom, knowing he couldn't possibly survive a direct encounter with the alien without his Iron Man suit. As Tony darted through his home, Venom turned the building into Swiss cheese, pulling off walls and tearing open elevators, trying to rip Tony apart. Now, Tony managed to get to the armory and don his costume, and instead of blasting Venom to a pulp, Iron Man reasoned with him, telling Venom that Stark was innocent and that he will prove it in time. Venom agreed to back off, but he threatened to come back.
Coming in at number 10, we have Ultimate Captain America versus Ultimate Giant Man. Now, the Ultimate Universe is well known for being a bit edgier and darker than the regular Marvel Universe, and no two characters better represent this than its versions of Steve Rogers and Hank Pym, with Steve being a much more violent soldier and Hank being a self-loathing domestic abuser. Following an incident in which he set his ants upon his own wife, Steve Rogers confronted Hank Pym inside a bar against the orders of his superiors and demanded Hank change size and fight him. The resulting brawl destroys half of a city block, but ends with Steve still being able to knock Hank unconscious, showing that in this case, size definitely isn't everything. Coming in at number 9, we have Hawkeye versus the Incredible Hulk. While most battles with the Hulk turn into massive city-spanning brawls, this hero versus hero encounter is more tragic than anything else. During the event known as Civil War II, the Avengers receive a vision from the future that appears to show the Hulk killing most of his teammates. Given that Bruce Banner hasn't turned into the creature for at least a year by this point, the other Avengers are obviously concerned. Unfortunately, they barely have a chance to debate with Bruce before Hawkeye has shot a fatal arrow killing Bruce instantly. And while it would later be revealed that Bruce had asked Hawkeye to do this to prevent him from hurting anyone else, and that Bruce would also eventually be resurrected by his own gamma mutation, it still was a tremendously dramatic and intense moment in an event filled with dramatic and intense moments. Coming in at number 8, we're taking a detour into the Marvel Cinematic Universe with Thor vs. Hulk from the third Thor film, Thor Ragnarok. After being stranded on the mysterious planet of Sakaar, Thor is originally overjoyed to see his friend from work, Bruce Banner. Unfortunately, the Hulk has fully embraced his new role as a Sakaarian gladiator, fighting under the Grandmaster, and Thor has to battle with his former ally for the amusement of the crowd. This fight scene is one of the funnest in the entire MCU, and has delighted fans ever since it was first shown off in the very first Ragnarok trailer, giving us multiple callbacks to other films and giving us a delightful new status quo for Thor and the Hulk. Coming in at number 7, we have Captain America vs. Star-Lord. Also taking place in the event Civil War II, this superhero showdown was thankfully a lot less personal for Cap than the original Civil War event, but also featured some heroes that weren't around for the first superhero smackdown. One of the most notable of those heroes was Star-Lord, who wasn't yet a big name during Civil War I, but had seen renewed success following the release of the Guardians of the Galaxy films, and thus was a shoo-in to be featured in the sequel. Coming to Captain Marvel's aid as she stood on the pro-future vision side of the debate, Star-Lord soon found himself in fisticuffs with Captain America himself, complaining about having to fight a guy with a shield. We've all been there, Peter. We've all been there.
Number 6, Batman vs. Reverse Flash. Right at the very beginning of The Flash, the Button, which is part of the crossover between The Flash and Batman and the prelude to Doomsday Clock the Button, the Reverse Flash ends up in the Batcave. Now, Batman has taken on metahumans quite a bit, but of all the villains out there, it's probably Superman's and the Flash's villains that most other heroes are going to have a hard time with. Eobard Thawne has been able to move faster than the Flash himself, and he has pulled the wool over Barry Allen in some big ways. So Eobard against Batman, it's a real interesting fight, if not a very one-sided fight. Batman had just hung up the phone with Barry when Eobard showed up, and in the minute that Barry said he would take to get there, Reverse Flash beats Batman purple and rips up a note written for him by Flashpoint Batman, aka Thomas Wayne, his dad. After that, Batman is able to get in a few licks after plunging a batarang right through Eobard's foot, but that only results in another beating from the Reverse Flash. Batman just barely survives the fight with the evil speedster. Number 5, Hulk vs. Doc Ock. Now this one is kind of crazy. You'd think that the Hulk would wipe the floor with Doc Ock. When the Hulk and Spider-Man fought, Hulk only lost because Spidey gained some cosmic empowerment, but for Otto Octavius, all he needed was a spiffy new set of adamantium arms. So way back in the day, Dr. Octopus happened to get his hands on some adamantium octopus arms, and they were put out of commission and weirdly forgot about for a very long time, until they made a spectacular proper return in Spider-Man 1990 issue 18 and 19. This is the Revenge of the Sinister Six arc, and not only does Otto manage to make quick work of the entire Sinister Six to take control, even turning the Sandman into glass, he also defeats Spider-Man, throwing him miles away from the fight, but then he gets his hands on Professor Hulk with these new spiffy arms. And not only does he completely lift Hulk into the air, he then beats the guy up so bad that he gets knocked unconscious. Number 4, Hulk vs. Thanos. Now, I'll admit, this moment kind of annoys me in retrospect, and that's just because it was the whole reason that Bruce Banner's Hulk doesn't get to really show up for any of the MCU's Avengers Infinity War or Avengers Endgame, which is a damn shame. The Hulk is the strongest there is, or at least he usually thinks he is. The Hulk's raw power makes for some truly crazy and satisfying scenes, especially in the MCU. People in the theaters of Avengers Infinity War were pumped to see the Hulk face Thanos. Comic book fans, however, are well aware that Thanos can defeat the Hulk, but the way he does it in Infinity War, man. After letting the Hulk get in maybe like a few punches, Thanos displays his superior strength as he pulls Hulk's hands back off of his shoulders and then a little quick tester jab to the shoulder gets the Hulk stumbling back. After a quick little sizing up, Thanos not only blocks or redirects every single swing the Hulk throws, but he continuously pummels the Hulk, throwing jab after jab and even getting in a good knee to the face, leaving the Hulk delirious before Thanos lifts the massive green Goliath over his head and slams him full force into the ground. It basically neuters the Hulk from being able to manifest from Banner going forward, which eventually leads to Professor Hulk. Number 3, Superman vs. Doomsday. Doomsday does not speak. He can't be reasoned with, and the only way to get him to stop is to beat him harder than he will beat you. That's because Doomsday was created on the planet Krypton as the ultimate life form, tested against that planet's harsh environment and eventually against the Kryptonians themselves. So, when he first ever appeared, he was the perfect match to face off against Superman, and he did a spectacular job. Superman didn't properly stand a chance against this guy. The Justice League and Superman attempted to stop the monster from reaching Metropolis, but even their combined might couldn't effectively slow the creature down, with the hero Booster Gold giving the creature its name after being brutally defeated by it. Vowing to stop the villain at all costs, Superman fought Doomsday alone and hand to hand in the streets of Metropolis, each of them mortally wounding one another while the shocked world just watched on in disbelief. Relieved that the monster had been finally defeated once and for all, or at least it seemed that way, Superman passed away in Lois's arms in Superman number 75, which became a hugely popular story for that very reason. In at number 2 today, it's General Zod versus Captain Boomerang. Okay, now to preface this, Captain Boomerang is not a hero, except for when he is part of Task Force X, aka the Suicide Squad. And even then, it's tough to call any of them a hero. But regardless of that, Captain Boomerang is not the guy you would put up against a Kryptonian. In 2016's Suicide Squad, in the second issue, Task Force X are sent on a mission to Russia to retrieve or destroy an unknown device. Turns out that device is actually a portal to the Phantom Zone. Rather than leave that thing be, Captain Boomerang waltzes on up to the portal and is literally incinerated down to his ankles instantly by none other than General Zod, who was trapped inside. I doubt the Boomerang guy would have been able to help much in the squad's fight against Zod. It's honestly a miracle that any of them survived, with Katana being the main one able to actually do some damage. It was kinda nuts. And finally, in at number 1 today, Wolverine versus Magneto. In the 1993 crossover event Fatal Attractions, Magneto was offering mutants sanctuary on his ship, the Avalon, and recovering from the legacy virus, he was planning to completely wipe out humanity, being opposed by the X-Men. Now Xavier, in a special Shi'ar suit, leads the fight against Magneto on Avalon, and Magneto holds everyone off until Wolverine gets the drop on him. Now, I should say, Wolverine versus Magneto is the stupidest fight ever. It doesn't even make sense. Wolverine, he has metal on his skeleton. Wolverine makes it so close to him, slicing him across the chest just a little bit too close for Magneto's comfort, and that pushes Magneto over the edge. He basically turns the adamantium on Wolverine's skeleton into liquid and quite literally pulls it out of his body. This got Magneto brought down quick by Xavier. It led to the rise of Onslaught, that huge massive villain. It revealed that Wolverine's claws are actually bone, and it turned Wolverine into a completely feral version of himself with no nose, which is weird.
Coming in at number 10, we have a particularly memorable battle between Batman and Darkseid. While most battles between these two foes have been more strategic or mental affairs, given the vast power difference between the human Batman and the godlike leader of Apocalypse, this occasion called for a bit more brute force. When Darkseid had stolen the body of a temporarily deceased Damian Wayne, his father wasted no time in launching a full-scale attack on Apocalypse to return Damian's remains home. Using an incredibly unstable exoskeleton called the Hellbat armor that's power alone nearly killed Batman just by wielding it, Batman was able to defeat Darkseid's son and then face the new god in physical combat while his companions escaped. It was a 1 in a million plan that just barely succeeded, but it just goes to show that even an ordinary man like Bruce Wayne can stand up to an evil god. At number 9, we've got to go with an iconic clash between Superman and Imperiex. A lesser-known Superman villain from the year 2000, Imperiex claimed to be the being that lit the fuse on the Big Bang, and wanted to cause a similarly huge explosion to end the current DC universe. Naturally, the heroes of Earth banded together to stop this intergalactic threat, but found themselves outmatched when Imperiex combined his might and consciousness with that of both Brainiac and the weaponized space station Warworld. It was only through Superman's immense strength and the clever use of a boom tube that Superman was able to send this villain back to the initial Big Bang and destroy him in the very explosion that began it all. Coming in at number 8, we're taking a brief detour into the Marvel Cinematic Universe with the Scarlet Witch versus Agatha Harkness. After multiple episodes of magic, deception, and sitcom-inspired hijinks, the grand finale of WandaVision saw our biggest magical battle in the MCU yet, with Wanda Maximoff finally starting to realize her potential as a wielder of chaos magic, and the devious Agatha Harkness attempting to seize that power for her own. With the entire battle taking place in a reality of Wanda's own making, and with the massive ruins used to finally outwit Agatha, this battle was one for the ages, and it's exciting to think of where magical battles in the MCU will go next when we finally get to see Wanda again in Doctor Strange 2. At number 7, we've got another MCU adjacent battle with the Watcher versus Ultron. For the entirety of Marvel's What If's first season, the Watcher vowed to never interfere with the different stories he was telling. But when the victorious Ultron of a dark universe collected all of the Infinity Stones, he became powerful enough to become aware of both the Watcher and the multiverse. Battling across multiple realities, the Watcher was eventually forced to take action and put together a team made up of beings from across the multiple realities, becoming the Guardians of the Multiverse and finally being able to take Ultron down.
Number 6, Squirrel Girl and Doctor Doom. So Squirrel Girl has beaten some big bads in the Marvel Universe before. She's taken down MODOK, Mandarin, and at one point Thanos. It's becoming a running joke by now, but one defeat that always shocks me is when a bunch of squirrels took down Victor Von Doom. Just a bunch of squirrels. Yeah, it happened back in the 90s in Marvel Superheroes issue 8. So she bumps into Iron Man and then starts to show what she can do, alright? She's trying to give him a run for his money in order to show how rough and tough she really can be. So she shows him her mutant powers, like jumping, hopping, climbing, all like a squirrel. It's amazing. He's fascinated. She's even pumped to show him that she can also sound like a squirrel too, which, I mean, if you can do it, I would love to see that. Fair. But the most impressive of all these abilities has to be when an abundance of squirrels is commanded to jump onto Stark, and then enter Doctor Doom. Doom comes in and he interrupts Stark's electronics. So, in order to save Tony at this point, she needs to send a horde of squirrels onto the Doom ship. Just a horde of squirrels. As if they don't have, wives and kids to go back home. They have nuts to store and eat. They have things to do, right? And voila, Stark is free thanks to the insane squirrel posse. Then the rodents get their fur on Doctor Doom and he's forced to retreat and jump into nearby water. It's the best panel ever. He's like, squirrels? No way, man, I'm out of here. Good riddance, peace. And then he literally runs away and jumps. Like he's out of there. He wants nothing to do with that. One of those times you're happy the hero won, but like, squirrels. We have a lot of squirrels up here in Canada. I don't think they can take on Doctor Doom. They're pretty fat. Number 5, Spider-Man and the Red Goblin. The Red Goblin. It's a mix between the Green Goblin and Carnage. I mean, you have a combination of two of the most powerful bad guys ever against Peter. He shouldn't have won this, I don't think. Let me explain. Appearing in the Amazing Spider-Man 798, this all came to life after Norman Osborn stole the Carnage symbiote, and after that, all hell just broke loose. He created this monster. So Norman used the Carnage symbiote to eject all the nanites, but then that ended up creating this monster mashup becoming the Red Goblin. It was like a science experiment that made things worse for everyone, but better for him almost. So the rare weaknesses that the symbiote did have went away once the two had merged, making him like unstoppable. Peter Parker for sure should have lost this battle. I mean, he's so overpowered here. I mean, even the bombs that he throws at Spider-Man are upgraded versions of his own bombs. This time around, the bombs are red Carnage bombs that Pete can't even sense. It's all fused together and it's really intimidating. It's very scary. So Pete seems to agree by his choice of words. Peter admits a few pages later after he retreats that he couldn't last 3 minutes in the ring with him. Yeah, I agree. The readers are like, absolutely. You're absolutely right. The final issue had Peter get the upper hand on Osborn, By mind games? Yeah, he explains how Carnage will get all the glory here in this defeat of Spider-Man and not Norman Osborn. I mean, ego is a great place to attack. If it works, it works. So when he becomes Norman Osborn again, the fight is manageable now, and Spider-Man can come out on top. Now, as great as this is, I really don't think it would be this easy to turn the tides. Not after seeing Carnage bombs. Get out of here, no way. Number 4, Batman and the Hulk. Yep, you heard me. So back in the late 70s, Marvel and DC came together for a handful of crossovers. One of these crossovers featured a battle with the Incredible Hulk and Batman. There have been many conversations about who would win in a fight between Iron Man and Batman. If you're a fan of this page, odds are you've had this talk with your friends, because they're both humans who rely on their brains and brawn to get by, kind of even. Personally, I'd pick Batman to win that fight any day. But the Hulk, no chance. Batman vs. the Hulk, issue 27 of DC Comics Special Series. So we have Batman and the Joker trying to control the Green Giant. And when the Hulk gets his hands on Batman, well, that should have been the end for sure. Even Batman said he felt like his spine was going to snap like a pencil. And believe me, if anybody knows what that feels like, it's definitely Batman. So he gets out of his grasp by a nice double ear smack, and then he finishes him off by using some sleeping gas from his belt, followed by a nice flying kick. Now, it's great to see Batman use his skills to take down the Beast. That's what he's good at. Unfortunately, I don't think any fight between them would ever last long enough to give him the chance to do so, especially if he has him in his hands. He would be dead. Number 3, Iron Man and Magneto. Now, when I say that, your first thought probably is, well, of course Magneto would win a fight fighting a guy in a metal suit, but this wasn't the case during an X-Men vs. Avengers storyline. If you think this is a no contest, you've never met Tony Stark. So Stark gets buried by Magneto under 200 tons of rubble, because even though Tony's suit at this point was made of carbon nanotubes, the island that he was fighting on was made of metal. So step 2 was for Tony to release a swarm of high-tech magnets to try and throw him off his game a little bit. This of course didn't work. You're giving magnets to Magneto, you know? So Magneto tried reaching out to the cosmos to channel power from other planets, but in doing so, he sensed a disruption in the form of the Phoenix Force. So while he was distracted there, Tony took this as an opening and knocked him out. Now, as fun as this was, and it led to other fun things, it was also highly unlikely that Iron Man will beat Magneto again. If this happened on the big screen, fans would rip it apart, no doubt about it. Number 2, Thor and the Incredible Hulk. Thor Ragnarok is easily one of the best installments in the Infinity Saga. Taika Waititi is returning to the studio to do Thor Love and Thunder, and I can't wait. He's super funny. If you haven't seen What We Do in the Shadows, go watch it out. It's his best work, I'd say. And Jojo Rabbit. He makes good movies. So one of my favorite scenes from the movie is also one that makes fans pretty annoyed. Now, this part in the movie had to happen so the plot can move a certain way, and we got to see a cool battle take place in the meantime, but it's also kind of unrealistic. So the Grandmaster's great champion, of course, ends up being Thor's friend from work, Hulk. Now, he's been there for a while after Sokovia, so he's not the same green guy as they last saw. Thor spent most of the fight getting it handed to him. He was trying to talk to Bruce, trying to calm him down, give him little arm tickles. It wasn't working out. Until he tapped into his true powers and unleashed a good number of lightning bolts to the face. That ought to do it. So Thor is about to finish off Sakar's champion once and for all until the Grandmaster himself intervened. If only he had replaced that remote for like 2 seconds, this movie would have gone a much different route. Maybe less fun, but probably more honest. And finally, number 1, Old Man Logan and the Hulk. I like the Hulk. He shouldn't really lose anything ever. That's the point I'm getting at. Seeing the Hulk fight Wolverine is something I hope we can see on the big screen in my lifetime. I mean, with all these franchises crossing over soon with WandaVision and stuff, maybe it's sooner than we think, but I doubt it. They have no reason to fight yet. But one of the highlight battles between these two beasts take place in Old Man Logan. Now, at the end of the story, Logan went back to finish off Hulk Gang, right? Of course. So soon after the Hulk comes out, they start fighting, even throwing cows at one another. Real wild stuff. Funny, gory, scary, loud, you name it. And then he turns into the big green guy, and boy, does it get ugly. So Billy Bob comes in the cave later on and sees just a mess. He sees bodies all over the floor, and then he sees Hulk struggling with some digestion problems. Odd. So then Wolverine literally rips his way out of his stomach, and that's what kills the Hulk. The Hulk should have won this fight for sure. If he didn't make the mistake of eating him, he probably could have done it. Or the Hulk should have healed after the whole Wolverine C-section thing, so the fight should have maybe continued. I mean, for the story to end this way, it was a little disappointing.